Okay, we've started it up again. And so let's go if anybody has questions. Make sure you unmute when you ask your question. And also we should review the questions that were put in the chat as well.
Also remind people that we do have folks here from Cal Academy who worked on the production of the show. So if anyone has any questions about that aspect, you can also ask them your questions.
So looking in the chat, is there anyone working on the European Portuguese translation? Dario, not that I know of. So please reach out. I'll write down your name. We'd love to work on translations. This will be an interesting one because there's a lot of people in the script. So, but we're excited. So Andy asked, will any of our live social media events be bilingual or in Spanish?
Yes. So we are working on simultaneous translation of our social media events. We probably most of them are going to be done in English first, but we're working on having simultaneous Spanish translation. And then we do have a member of our team, Yasmin, who's Chilean, and she works for AUI now, and she is going to be leading some in Spanish. And so our goal is to have some as many as we can to have them simultaneously translated, but that's, as you can imagine, it's a little complicated to get all set up, and the translation is better than some products that do that are better than others. So we're working on that, but that is a goal of ours. And at the very least, we'll have some in English and some in Spanish.
Great. Peggy asked, will formal educators be able to access the guides from the web portal? Yes, absolutely. More components of the project are going to be rolled out on the website in the coming months, I'd say in the next month or two. And one of those will be a link to the educator guide that Renae showed us and some of the hands-on kits that will be available for people without having to fill out that form. And
And I also saw, Tiffany, in your answer in the chat, you put in the hashtags that we have. So if you are doing any social media posts related to Big Astronomy, the hashtags will actually really help us out in collecting data for the project. So do encourage people to use the hashtags. That would be really great for us.
Okay, do we want to keep going through the chat, or does anyone have any questions?
What was the lead institution? This is obviously a really big, complicated thing, but who started it off?
Renae and Shannon.
Sort of. I mean, Shannon and I were in that 2015 ASEP cohort, and that was the first cohort that went down. And we, as a part of that project, you are required, if you get accepted, to come up with these educational activities that you can do afterwards to teach about these astronomy, these fantastic astronomy facilities that, of course, the United States is funding, but they're not in the United States. They're in Chile, or partially funding with the case of ALMA, which is, of course, an international product. But both of us were like, let's make a planetarium show. But I'll be honest, we thought we'd make like a small planetarium show. I think both of us had a pretty small dream, just putting together resources that we would, freely share. Maybe that was something we had both kind of thought of. But Tim Spuck from AUI, he's the PI for the ASEP project. And he has a way of taking your dream and making it big. So it was Shannon and I working with Tim to start the original project, and then when we started thinking about the show and who we would want to partner with to create the show, we immediately thought of the California Academy of Sciences, and so that's when we reached out, and Ryan Wyatt led his team from Cal Academy to actually create the show.
We should note that Josh Roberts, who's on here, is also an ASAP ambassador who's at Cal Academy. So that's sort of a beautiful thing about ASAP, is that there's we have people everywhere, and we have just a wonderful, great web of wonderfulness that we can reach out to and to where spreading it. So we, through that, like, we're able to really tap into wonderful resources but yeah, so AUI is the lead institution on the grant to NSF. They are, Tim Spuck is also listed as the PI, but we also have co-PIs at several of the other institutions. So myself, Vivian, and Ryan are also all listed as co-PIs at our institution for the different components.
Okay, so the last question I'm seeing in the chat is, Peggy, I'm a school district planetarian, but we have several large clubs in the area. Is it the hope that we would coordinate? Yes, absolutely. We would love if you'd work with your local clubs, amateur astronomer clubs, especially if they get the hands-on kits. Having them come in to show, to do a telescope program or something, just any sort of coordination like that that can help further the learning outside of the dome is wonderful.
I just want to interject. This is also something we haven't done before. Some workshops have like a sign-up sheet when you come in, and we've never done that. But we have about, I don't know, we've had 30 people, it went up to 32. If you want to sign the sign-out sheet before you leave, put your name in the chat. Okay, maybe your name and where you're from, but I don't want to stop the question and answer period. That's just if anybody has to leave a bit early and want to sign the sign out sheet. We have a sign out sheet. It's called the chat. Any other questions?
Toshi just asked where we plan to publish the research. Don't know yet. But I think the types of places that we would be looking at, we'd probably put something in the planetarium, but I think beyond that, museum education, maybe there's the
CAP,
JARST, or there's the I'm blanking on lots of acronyms today. JZ. There's the JZ, which is the Journal of Astronomy and Earth Science. So these are the types of journals that we'd probably be looking at. And then Sarah is saying the rest of my planetarium team is interested in what types of activities you are planning for the September 26th release. So I think, Sarah, are you asking about like live events and things like that? Because I think outside of that, it's up to your planetarium, like what you want to do on that day. But Renae, I think, might have a better answer.
We were planning in advance of the May 2nd release to have feature the California Academy of Sciences production team, and so I hope that we can do something like that on the September 26th event, or right up to it, leading right up to it, to talk about the making of the show and all the special techniques that they use to film such a beautiful show. And then we'll have programs leading up to the release and then right after the release as well, to help publicize it. And Sarah wants to know, what do we have planned for that day to tie all the institutions together? Sarah, I'm not 100% sure yet, but let's think about it. Maybe you can help us come up with some ideas. I mean, maybe it could just be like an event that shows all the places around the world that are showing the show, that everyone has a little representation at, but we'll brainstorm on how we can make sure that we show what a global event it is.
And we didn't mention the kinds of hands-on activities. That's another thing you could utilize maybe outside your dome before or after the show. A couple of examples is this really great demonstration on light pollution. There's actually a couple in the kit on light pollution. showing the importance of shielding lights, also showing how we perceive constellations and how that's affected by light pollution. I think the galaxy formation one is there. There's a spectroscopy treasure hunt that people can take home and go try to like look at different kinds of light and see how it's like through a little film, you know? So anyway, there's some really great activities in there. I'm really excited to use them myself. They're fun.
I have a this may be kind of a dumb question, maybe not. It's sort of outside, but the term big astronomy, you know, if you're going to take away from the planetarium show or from the experience in general, to a lay person, what would you say big astronomy is? Is it just big telescopes, or is it big data? I mean, in a nutshell, what could you say it was?
Yes.
Ryan, do you want to take that one on?
I think that the main meaning of big is the big teams required to make these phenomenal places work. And we were very cognizant of sort of the big data
Note the correlator behind
connotations
you.
of the name, but and in fact the Spanish translation uses the same phraseology as you would use to refer to big data. So it was kind of inspired by that, but I mean, interestingly, I mean, as if you've ever titled anything with a large group of people, you go through all of these iterations, and Big Astronomy was actually part of the grant title. And so we actually just sort of came back to it as a phrase that to us really had the connotations of how huge these projects are. And then in the case of this story, it really comes back to the people. So the big teams that make these things work.
That background behind you looks like Big Astronomy too.
So this is actually a picture I took at the summit of ALMA. This is one of the correlators. I think it's the Japanese correlator. So.
And thanks for staying throughout this. You put a note that you'd have to leave, that you were just lurking, but thanks for coming out.
Yeah, I had another call that ended at 2:30, so I was just watching.
I think I'll be the first person to be brave enough to ask a question on video. So hello, everyone.
Thank you, Mitch.
Like a lot of people, we were looking forward to launching the show on Astronomy Day. And when I looked up when the next Astronomy Day was in September, the new date, it's not available to us at our site. We already have a conflicting program. Are we permitted to launch the show earlier, or should we wait until after the big rollout on Fall Astronomy Day?
You can go ahead, Ryan. Thank you, Mitch, for asking
We
your
have a
question.
prepared answer for this. I don't know. Anyway,
Go ahead.
So we've really struggled with this. That we're just dancing this fine line of really wanting as many people for this critical mass on September 26th in hopes of getting good national and even international PR. And so that's pushing a lot of that. But we also don't want to be in a position of just saying no to people who want to run the show. So I think that I think the short answer is we're happy to work with you on rolling the show out when it works best for you. But we are eager for as many places as possible to hold off until the September 26th.
And I do want to mention that the show is available right now. We encourage you to go get it, go watch it. If you have like private groups that want to see it before you need to make decisions on your programming, something like that, school groups, that's not a problem at all. We we encourage you guys to join us for the September 26th if possible, but I do completely understand. We all understand that, you know, we just have to be flexible, and that's okay.
That said, one thing that has been asked in the past couple of days was, since you can download a 1K version right now on the website, someone asked if it was okay for people to download that and share it with their students as sort of a distance learning, since all the schools are closed. And we are asking that people not do that. If you're going to show it, please make sure it is in a dome. And the reason why we are asking that is for research purposes. The model that we are testing right now is centered on the dome. And so to not show it in the dome right now would sort of complicate the data collection around that and the model that we are trying to test. And so that's why there will eventually be an HD flat screen version that will be available once we are done collecting data, but it is not available right now for that reason. So we are trying, this did complicate the research, so it is going to be interesting. We are going to have a lot of lovely statements in our research papers about COVID-19, I think, but we are going to just ask that people refrain from sharing that online in any way.
Do we have any other questions? You guys have great questions. Sorry, I did my planetarian thing on you guys.
Thanks so much for everyone who tuned in today. If there's no more questions, I just wanted to say that before we close, because it's really lovely to see. Oh, there's another question. I mentioned filming. Is this an animation with actual footage? The way it's filmed is, and actually maybe I should let Ryan answer that, but there are live interviews, actual real people interviews that are in the film. And then there's a lot of real footage in the film. And then they did some really fantastic visualizations as well.
Yeah, so it's about, and actually there is a making of video that's online as well. Maybe
I can post that
in the chat window. But the show is about 60% shot on video. As Shannon mentioned, it's actually the backbone of the show are interviews that we did with the people who actually work at these observatories. So we conducted about 30 interviews, most of which were bilingual in both Spanish and English. And we didn't transcribe those or anything like that. Instead, you hear the voices of the people who work at the observatories, and that carries the story through the narrative. And then we combine that technology story and people story with an astronomy story about the formation of planets. And so those sections are actually then computer generated. And then we also kind of knit together some of the scenes so that when we talk about Chile's geography, when we talk about the locations of these observatories in Chile, we do fly around a computer generated Earth. But I will note, I think we have both Ken Ackerman and Mike Schmidt on the line here. Both of them worked on the show and actually could probably at least spend a couple minutes talking about the cameras that we used to shoot the film. So I'm just looking at their little windows to see who unmutes, and Mike did.
Ken, do you want to start?
Go for it.
Sure. Hi, everybody.
Hey,
I'm
Ken.
Ken. Yeah, so I don't know. Well, anyways, we did basically two main things. We had a bunch of time-lapse photography we were doing, which we were shooting on our 3 cameras using a 8mm fisheye lens. And then for the main production video, we were using a Sony Venice camera, also with a Canon 8mm fisheye lens on it. And the Sony Venice is a beautiful camera, and we took it down there. We rented it up here, and we took it down to Chile with us. And we also rented a number of kind of cranes and stabilizers and different things and sliders so that we could get some cinematic moves to the camera. But that was the main setup we had going there.
And actually, I wanted to add, you asked about the title of Big Astronomy. I would say this was also a big production for us. We learned a lot of this from scratch. Luckily, we had some lead time to test a lot of different cameras, and we ultimately decided upon the Sony Venice with the help of a video rental place in San Francisco that really helped us figure out the technology. And then we also got a lot of help from very experienced time-lapse photographers that taught our photographer, Matt Blackwell, who's not here right now, how to shoot time-lapse photography well and consistently. And then we also found a crew down in Santiago that was indispensable in terms of helping us with all of the logistics and hooking us up with camera crews down there that could rent us gear and also transport all of the gear from Santiago to Cerro Tololo and Cerro Pachon, and also all the way up to Alma, which was a 24-hour drive for the van that we rented that brought all the gear up there. So it was a big production, very exciting, very interesting. We experienced a 6.7 earthquake when we were there. All sorts of things happened that were very memorable. And in the end, it really shows in the film. It's there's some great footage. The camera that we brought was so easy to use, and it was allowed us to shoot inside and outside and capture all the detail of those environments. So you'll be able to see that in the dome. In addition, we were able to scene that with computer graphics, so it feels continuous and smooth. So it's a really great show. It was one of the funnest ones I've ever worked on. And I hope you can spread the word once you see it, and try to get as many people to see it as possible. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and the other thing about the production that I want to add is that we ended up getting fairly close with a lot of the people who are in the show, and so we spent a lot of time up on the mountain with these people while they were working, kind of getting a bunch of equipment in their way, and they were all really nice, and it was really special opportunity. So everyone who's in the show, we have sort of a close connection with. So,
And the techniques that we learned making this show, we hope to use on future productions. So we'd like to start using more video, because up until now, shooting high quality full dome video has been very, very tricky. Usually had to use multiple cameras and then stitch things together, or you had to shoot time lapse. But now with this new camera, we're able to do a lot of new different things, and we've learned how to actually move the camera through space. In addition to putting it on a crane or a dolly, we can also attach it to our body, because it has a detachable lens, the sensor and the lens detach from the camera, so you can hook it up to a stabilizer and then walk with it. So you can get a nice smooth motion that doesn't make people sick in the planetarium, but low to the ground in sort of a human POV. So it's a new way of filmmaking for us, and we'd also would like to teach other people how to do it and spread the word of the techniques that we've learned.
You put it on a drone.
Could. Well, it'd be a big drone. And it's a very expensive camera. So
yeah.
It's, I don't know. I'm sure somebody will do it.
People have asked where to preview the show, and I put the link to the Morrison Planetarium's website, the Cal Academy website, where you can preview it. But since these comments are going to get posted as with the YouTube video that will go up, I don't want to put the password up in the chat.
Well, we've gone for just about an hour, actually. And we have a strict rule that we don't have meetings any more than an hour. No, we have no such rule whatsoever. If you have any more questions, feel free to ask. But if there are no more questions, I think this is amazing. An amazing team has showed up here, actually, more people than just than just the three, Shannon, Tiffany, and Renae. And thanks, Shannon, Tiffany, and Renae. That was an amazing presentation. And thanks for the other people on your team for coming and chipping in. And I think to be appropriate to do one more round of applause. So unmute and start your video, and let's do one more round of applause.
Yay!
So if there are no more questions, I'll just say thanks from the Planetarians Zoom seminar series. We're going to be meeting again next month. I have to check the PPA website to see what the topic is. I think there are a couple of them upcoming. There's going to be one from JPL, Jeff Nee, who works at JPL, is going to be doing one in May. And Jason Fletcher is going to be doing one, I think, in June about the VR things that he's been doing, which I didn't know about until he posted it in Domel. And I was very curious, so we invited him. So stay tuned for upcoming Planetarian Zoom seminars. Thanks again for coming.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Hello.